My name is Michael Romeo and I'm a cutlery expert. A lot of people ask, what does that mean to be a cutlery expert? Well, for me, it is somebody who is very keyed into cutlery and the changes of cutlery and how it's evolved over time. It's something that is often overlooked in society, like a lot of people don't think about it, but I find it's a very interesting tool to show how humans have developed over the years and how us as a species have moved on from, first using tools with sticks and rocks and now with metal tools. I have a bachelor's degree in Cutlery Sciences, which I got at Edmonds University. Through that degree, I was able to get jobs working for movie companies to make sure their sets were authentic. Does this table look like the way it was in the 1800s? Are they using the right cutlery? So most of my work is just basically for a historian kind of authenticator to make sure the scenes in the movies look real. One of my favorite stories I have is from when I was working on the set of the Titanic. I was in charge of making sure all the utensils were from the right time period and everything. And one of them accidentally got lost and it was moved over to the catering facility. And one crew member accidentally used it and ate with it. And he ate with a $15 million fork. So that just shows you the value of cutlery if it's a really nice set. In this particular set, we were using a really, really fancy set made out of super fine materials and very nice silver. So it was really great. It was really funny, but we were all really worried that it was lost, but really it was just some crew member was just eating with it. So yeah, we were luckily able to get it back, because if we had lost something from that set, oh wow, we would have been in so much trouble. So thank goodness, we were able to get it and find it. But now that crew member gets to say that he's eaten with a $15 million fork. And I always think that's pretty lucky, because not many people get to say that they got to eat with a $15 million fork. Like, I wish that was me, honestly, really. I wish I got to eat with it, but the most expensive fork I've ever eaten with cost $2,000, but I usually like to stay away from using my cutlery with food, at least the ones in my collection, because I don't want them to get ruined or get stained. So, I like to keep them in pretty good condition. I actually use fairly mid-range cutlery. I don't actually obviously I don't use cheap cutlery because that's garbage, but I don't buy the super, super expensive stuff just to have in my house for day-to-day use, because I feel like it's going to get damaged. I have cutlery that dates back to the 16th century, and I also have cutlery from today's generation, because I find all cutlery interesting. Even though it may not be old, I still think if it's a different design or a unique design, I will definitely take one for my collection just to kind of have it, to kind of see how it's progressed throughout the years, which I think is really interesting. Not much thought goes into, how did this fork get designed, and how long did it take to be made, and what are all the materials it's made out of, and the designs on it, if there are any. I really like all those little details. So I'm going to be going through some interesting cutlery today with you guys. First off, let's just start off with the knives then. Everybody knows the classic butter knife. It looks basically like this. You'll find it in restaurants and cheap kind of cafeterias. Nice and shiny, very minimal. Small little blade to it. The serrations are all right. There's not too much flex in the actual knife itself, but that's a good thing because this is like a mid-range knife. This butter knife here is a very traditional butter knife. This is the kind that you'd find in your old dining set, and it's very well made and very well weighted. It's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. And it's a really well made knife. And the grip of it is if you look at it compared to this really basic standard knife, this grip is about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch shorter. But I prefer this shorter design because I think it fits in your hand a little bit better and you can kind of get more leverage on it and more chopping action. I feel that this knife is actually way superior. We'll move on to your cheap dollar store knife here. This knife is absolutely horribly made. It is easily flexible and it has been stamped out by the millions in China. This one has got very rough edges to it. There's nothing nice and smooth about this knife at all. The handle flares up at the back. I really don't like this feature. It turns out that 75% of the population also do not like flared up ends on their butter knives. It's an interesting fact. I thought that it would be more of a 50-50 kind of thing, but it turns out that most people are like me on this and they don't like this. Comment in the poll above, do you like flared up bits on your butter knife or not? Moving on to another really horrible butter knife, we got this one here.
This butter knife, as you can see, has not got a nice straight spine to it. It angles down from the blade of the knife and from the handle into the little middle bit, which just looks really bad in my opinion. And this knife also is just been stamped out really quickly. The finishing on it is not really very good. It's just really rough to the touch. The serrations on this knife are not very nice at all. This knife I would avoid at all costs, basically. This is a horrible knife. This next knife was a very influential knife. This knife was first patented in 1947. The guy who invented it, John Graham II, he was having difficulties chopping his potatoes. And for most people, when you have a dull knife, you decide to sharpen the blade. But with him, he was like, well, I think it's actually the handle that is the problem. So he made this super ergonomic handle which improves the grip of the knife by 25%, and it gives you a 25% better cutting experience. As you can see, it tapers down from the back of the handle and it kind of gives this little area for your fingers to fit in. And it's a really nice knife actually. It fits really well. And it's a really good grip. Like I can see that this could cut better. This knife influenced pretty much every butter knife made after 1947. Most knives before this had a flat stock, basically a very thin stock handle. But after that, they started making butter knives with more of a thicker stock handle, like this.
Another funny story I have was the one time I accidentally ripped off one of the guys from the Storage Wars show. He brought us a really nice set of fine silverware. He wanted us to determine how old it was and what materials it was from and how much it was worth, of course. So me being new to the cutlery scene, I misread the dates on the back of the spoons and I thought that they were from 1993 and they were actually from 1893. And then I also thought it wasn't pure silver, so I only said that they were worth $200. He didn't spend that much on the storage locker, so he still took the $200. However, when my boss went through the silverware later, he actually determined that the value of it was about $300,000. So yeah, we kind of ripped him off pretty good. But I wanted to tell the guy that there was a bit of a mistake, because that would have been like the largest and best find ever on Storage Wars. But my boss was like, no, don't say anything. So yeah, he kept it a secret. Probably shouldn't have said that. Well... And anyways, yeah, so it was just, I was learning. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I read it as 1993 and I didn't realize that it was solid silver. So basically, yeah, it was a bit of a mistake on my part, but it did work out in the end, at least for us. That guy's business, he did really good from that. Like, I think he was able to pay off all his debts. He didn't have any more debt and I did get a good raise, so yeah. Now I know all the symbols off by heart and I'm way better, and that would never happen ever again. So yeah, definitely don't need to worry about that ever happening. That was just a one-off. So sorry to that guy. I'm not going to say his name because don't really want him finding out, because he was a little scary. He'd probably be pretty mad. So yeah.
So now we're going to move on to some forks. When it comes to forks, I'm also a traditionalist. My favorite forks are the silver forks from the 19th century. Just the way that they are made is just so nice and they're just so smooth. They may be smaller than other forks, like this is a standard fork here, but as you can see, it's quite a lot shorter, but it just fits in your hands so much better, and it just is such a nice experience using one of these forks. Another really interesting thing about this is that the tines of this fork are so much longer than normal forks these days. Like this is a very standard fork here, and as you can see, the tines on these ones are almost double the size. It's very, very interesting. So this fork here is a very basic cheap fork. It is printed out, just stamped out, not been like really nicely tumbled. The edges of it are pretty rough. The tines on it are nothing special. They're really short. The thing about this fork is it's more for scooping. This one also, you can scoop more liquid with it than the other one, but if you need to use your fork for liquid, just get a spoon. Forks for me are the most boring parts of cutlery. Basically, I'm more of a knife and spoon person. I feel like I wouldn't have become a cutlery expert if I hadn't at a young age stared at spoons. So basically, when I was a young kid, I would stare at spoons a lot and I would just look at them and kind of observe the different designs that they had and kind of, you know, look at myself in them and see the shiny ones and all the different designs they had. And through that, I just became like super fascinated with cutlery. So it's been a really interesting experience, and I find it's funny that my story is very similar to Zoolander's, actually, because I think spoons were what gave him inspiration to become a male model. So I find that it's kind of funny that we're vaguely similar in a way, even though he is a fictional character and I'm not. The next spoon I'm going to show you is a really nice silver spoon here. It's just got such a great design to it. I really like this design. It fits in your hands so well, and just the little end of it just curves over. This spoon was actually really interesting because it was the one that the Queen of Sweden used to put sugar in her afternoon tea for the first time. And this became like a revolutionary thing, and all across Europe, everybody, all the royalty had to have spoons like this. So I luckily have the very first spoon. This was the very first one used by the Queen of Sweden, and they were used all across Europe in the late 1800s, all the way up to 2003 when it became out of fashion. This spoon here is your very basic cheap spoon. As you can see, it bends really easily, so it's not very well made, and it's made out of very thin stainless steel. Interesting fact was these spoons were invented because prisoners were using their cutlery to escape. The cutlery they were given was too durable and was actually able to erode at the concrete, so they were able to dig their way out of prison and escape, which is really bad. And so they had to stop that from happening, so what did they do? They gave them cutlery like this that was really cheap. So cheap cutlery like this used to only be available in prisons. Like, you couldn't get this anywhere else, but companies were like, wait a second, we can make knives and forks and spoons and use half the materials and then sell them off to everybody. So they decided to put them into the mainstream market, and they actually did really well because people are very cheap, so they bought them up really quickly. That is why you can buy spoons and forks and stuff that you can bend really easily like this. You'd have to be really strong to bend like cutlery that was made in the 1900s. This spoon here, like if you try bending it, like it's so strong, like you can't, it doesn't give at all. You see how it's not perfectly rounded at the top? This was a spoon that was actually used by a prisoner to escape, and he left it behind and they kept it. But this is one of my favorite spoons in my collection because it's just got so much history as well, but also it's just so cool. Like, it shows how durable these spoons are. This was used to dig a 3-foot concrete hole, and look at it. Only that tiny little bit of metal got eroded. Like, that's it. Like, this is still a perfectly functioning spoon, and it's just amazing. Like, it's so cool. Yeah, I just love the old spoons. Like, these are my favorite out of all utensils. I just love these spoons. The way that they kind of angle down at the back of the handle is just perfect. They fit in your hands so well. These are like the perfect soup spoon in my opinion. I love these type of spoons, and they're just so well made. They're so smooth. You won't find a sharp edge on the handle anywhere. So thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found it interesting, and hopefully you learned a little bit about your day-to-day cutlery. If you have any questions, put them down below and I will do my best to answer them. So thank you so much for watching.